Concurrency, the new requirement for supply chain success. Well, joining us today to speak about that, Tom Rhoads, Global Vice President of Sales and Supply Chain Execution at Kinaxis. Tom, it's great to see you once again. Welcome.
Always a pleasure.
Tom, clearly concurrency, in your view, is something that is absolutely paramount if we're going to have a successful supply chain operation. But before we start talking about that and how it works, let's define our terms. What do we mean? What do you mean by concurrency?
So concurrency throughout the supply chain is a misnomer in the way that traditional business has been done. Siloed organizations across sales, marketing, and operations typically has been disjointed with systems, data, latency, inaccuracies, and orchestrating across that ecosystem, if you will, complexes the problem into multiple inaccuracies and latencies. So therefore, optimization traditionally has been in a point solution area of the supply chain. Concurrency changes that landscape. Traditionally, companies that have focused in their particular own landscape area, like planning, drives concurrency in what they may do, like Kinaxis as an example, as the leader in planning. But that new paradigm is now having to extend all the way through last mile execution in order to be successful, to break down the silos throughout the organizations that occur, as opposed to creating more silos between like planning and execution.
Well, this is interesting. We've been talking about silos for 25 years or more, and how deleterious they can be, to any organization, and the imperative to tear them down. This is a very interesting discussion we're going to have now about concurrency. So let's walk through just how it works. What would you say?
So our company, part of Kinaxis, acquired an execution company a year and a half ago. And that execution company, like many that are transactional, by definition, is inherently driving concurrency because they're integrated to multiple systems that drive workflows across multiple modes of transport, multiple regions, multiple currencies, multiple suppliers, across the landscape of the world. And when that integration of complexity is orchestrated, by definition, that's concurrency, right? But what it is not done is connecting it back to planning. So concurrency, while it's again in a silo between execution or a silo of planning, now needs to be connected. And that is critical to look at from an end-to-end optimization to drive customer service levels to an optimal point, so that it's not just cost as a driver, it's understanding how to meet on time in full and the key metrics that are required for the end customer, whether that be customers of a manufacturer, customers of a distributor, or customers of a logistics service provider even, which are extended customer bases.
So among the viewers right now, if there's a skeptic out there that says, well, tell me, is this really different from the comprehensive end-to-end supply chain that we've been talking about or envisioning, for decades? What would you tell that person? Are we talking about a real advance?
I would absolutely say that. So what we've had is the inherent problems 25 years ago around latency of inventory buffers and cost structures throughout the supply chain. And it used to be taking costs out of the supply chain. Again, one-sided supply chain. But they didn't think through the end-to-end delivery point to an end customer or consumer or DC, whatever that end drop point was. And when they look at just a point area of optimization, they don't understand the endpoint. So by definition, it is game-changing, quite frankly, because if you can change cycle times and reaction times and drive true streamline, both in cost and customer service levels, and balancing them together in an intelligent way, you then change the game because you're doing it from end to end, not from a middle mile or a transport move, and not from a supply and manufacturing perspective, or not from just a retail outbound perspective in omni-channel fulfillment, if you will. You're looking at it holistically. Where do I have inventory? How do I optimize where I pull that inventory and source it to optimize the transportation, not just from what a shipment order is, but from a customer order holistically, creating micro supply chains that might go on different modes of transport into an end destination point that's focused on a customer service level, meaning an on-time in full at the need and point of time that's necessary.
Tom, if I am a stubborn, let's just put it that way, individual that says, yeah, but what if? I'm not doing that. I'm not going to employ, this entire process that Tom is talking about. Well, tell me, what are the ramifications of that decision that I have just made?
So, most companies aren't doing this today, right? The Kinaxis happens to be the only company by bringing together execution and planning in a single holistic flow of concurrency. The companies that aren't doing this is 99.9% of them, right? Because this is a game-changing next evolution for the next decade plus, and how to not only thrive or survive, but more thrive into another level, right? We've seen companies like Walmart do this in the early 90s, taking control of their supply chain. Why? Because there's 8 to 12% of cost benefit by doing such, right? But imagine that was just a transport element. What if I was able to take that 8 to 12% in each of these siloed areas, combine them holistically, and I don't think myopically. We have to both change enablement of solution and technology, but also enablement in processes and thinking, so that we break down the barriers of organization, we break down the incentives that are, quite frankly, very different in each of those parts of the organization that negates what somebody might be doing in the operations side is opposite to the key performance gators in marketing. So part of that was S&OP to bridge the cross, supply and operations planning. But when we talk about real-time execution, what we really then is combine the S&OP financial plan and execution plan holistically together. So we understand the full plan in real time across the entire landscape of the organization and the extended elements of the organization, all your suppliers, all your customers, holistically.
Tom, you make a compelling argument, and as stubborn as I am, I feel like, well, maybe you have convinced me. So I guess my question would then be, when I come to Kinaxis, where really do I start if I want to try to implement or take advantage of the process that Tom is talking about? So what would you tell me as your potential customer?
So I would tell you three things, Ralph. One is starting anywhere is positive, right? But starting in a controlled, think of it as an MVP, an area that is going to take bite-sized chunks, business releases, if you will, of where the biggest pain points are in your organization. Whether that pain point might be on your inbound, transportation, or you're taking control of your contract manufacturing because you don't own those companies, but you want to act like you own them, so you need to understand the inventory they have. You need to understand the delivery windows and promises and collaboration with them. That might be one element. But do that in a bite-sized chunks. That's 12 weeks to get basically from start to finish. And then you look at other elements, but create a plan. It might be starting in execution. You'd be surprised at how many companies that are multi-billion-dollar companies. I was talking to one the other day that's a $40 billion company, and they don't have a transportation system. They don't have an order management system, right? So, but they're doing everything on manual spreadsheets, and they're the number one in their particular industry vertical, and they are a customer of Kinaxis as of a couple days ago, quite frankly.
So that's
they're
getting ready to
starting
change.
in the planning area,
Yeah.
But as we were talking together, and I was talking to the executive vice president of transformation globally for them, and he was admittedly stating to me, right, they're running the business on spreadsheets. They cannot survive. But the power of understanding where you start is just starting somewhere, but understanding that there can be a plan together, right? So when we have a plan, as an example, is as good as it's published. Once it's published, it's outdated. But understanding all the things that happen in the volatile supply chain that handles in execution, and changing and rerouting and dynamically addressing those volatile points, feeding back in real time into the planning side, and replanning and automating the replanning element is connecting across organization silos. So both parties understand how to achieve the end customer level, right? They both have the same common goal. How do I sell more in the marketplace, but also how do I create customer satisfaction to the highest point level? Because that, by definition, drives happier customers, drives more business, and makes your product succeed higher in the brand equity perspective.
So if you wait to get started, you'll never get started. So get started somewhere. Tom, great practical information today. Thank you so much for sitting down and speaking with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Russell, for having me.
That's Tom Rhoads, Kinaxis, speaking with us today about concurrency and how it is an absolute requirement for your supply chain success. Thanks for watching.